It is now 2 o'clock, and I hereby call to order the March 27th, 2024 meeting of the City of Prescott General Plan Review Committee. Board members present are, please, Terry Sapio, I'm here. Don Michaelman. Tom Hutchinson is absent. Andre Carmen? Absent, okay. Mary Fredrickson?
Here.
Ralph Hess?
Here.
Jim Huffman?
Yes, sir.
Rod Moyer, where's Rod Moyer is absent. Okay, I need to mark these. Rod, Andre, Don, Gary Warab,
Here.
James McCarver,
Here.
and Tom Riley.
Here.
All right, so we have 8, a total of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 of us here, and we'll require 5 for a majority. This is an open public meeting, and it's being recorded by the city. Oh, also, the other column, we also have Council Liaison Ted Gambogi and Lois Fruworth. Any other council members here tonight? I don't see any. Okay. And we have Tammy DeWitt, community planner, and anybody else from planning department come with you?
We have Michael McNeese from our CDBG, and he's also our housing representative. And we also have John Heine and Christina Brinkley from tourism and economic development.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. And we have Andre. So we now have 9. It still takes 5 for a majority vote. This is an open public meeting and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, and the public local cable and or radio stations may also rebroadcast. We've already determined that it takes 5 board members for a majority vote. 5, and we have 9 present. All parties wishing to be heard, including committee members, are required to state their name prior to speaking in order to ensure proper recordation. Members of the public are required to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Okay.
So you have the open call of the public.
Call to the public.
The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address the committee on matters not included on the agenda during the call to the public. Please complete a speaker card on the back table and submit it to city staff prior to the meeting being convened. Speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public is limited to 40 minutes in total. I don't think we have that many people here. Citizens are limited to addressing the committee 4 times regarding the same topic. Please note, members of the committee may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda, and therefore interaction will be limited to the following: responding to criticism, requests to staff to investigate and report on the matter, and 3 requests that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. We have 1 speaker card for Gary Anderson.
Thank you. Gary Anderson, 845 Flying U Court, Yavapai Hills, Prescott. Been a resident for 27 years. First of all, thank you to the General Plan Committee members for your volunteer service to our community. We do a lot of volunteer service in Yavapai Hills. It takes a commitment. I'm a member, I lead the Yavapai Hills Homeowners Association Sundog Committee, and I'm a member of the Sundog Disconnect as well. I'm here to request that the 2025 General Plan final document eliminates any references to Sundog Connector at all. The 2015 General Plan under 7.0 circulation element, which sounds like we're going to be talking about next time, on page 55 states the 2006 study recommends new regional transportation corridors, including Sundog Connector between Prescott Lakes Parkway and SR 69. Sundog Connector referenced in the 2015 General Plan was being used by SIMPO to pretend voters had approved building the Sundog Highway since voters approved of the 2015 General Plan. This is ridiculous, as evidenced by the overwhelming community opposition to the proposed Sundog Highway at SIMPO open houses, SIMPO stakeholder meetings, even feedback received from a recent Daily Courier Sundog online survey. Prescott Community Development hosted a general plan open forum at the Adult Center on Rosser, as you may recall. A number of comments, post-it notes, and check marks opposing the Sundog Highway were staggering, unbelievable. The 2013 Sundog Connector study conducted by ADOT and the City of Prescott also received extreme negative feedback from the participating residents. The opposition to building this highway is not diminished 11 years later. Although there appears to be no interest in proceeding with any more Sundog Highway planning at this time, it's possible that plans to build the highway could be resurrected. Reasons the community doesn't want this highway include excessive $150 million current estimated costs, limited benefits, including gaining insignificant 30 seconds to 1 minute reduced travel times, wildlife endangerment, up to 500-foot-high landscape scarring cuts in volcanic rock in 2 different places, and very negative impacts on Yavapai Hills and Diamond Valley neighborhoods. More important, community priorities are public safety, improving SR 69, and completing Glassford Dells Regional Park land acquisition and development for residents and ecotourist visitors' enjoyment. In closing, Sundog Disconnect Group is supported by Save the Dells, and majority of the 1,300 Yavapai Hills property owners who believe it's best to modify the 2025 general plan circulation element, eliminating the Sundog Connector Highway forever. Thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
And that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are to discussion and action items. We have before A, approval of the February 28, 2024 General Plan Committee minutes. Recommendation is to approve the minutes as presented. Do we have any comments, corrections on the minutes from last month?
No, but I make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. And so Gary made the motion and Tom seconded it. Let's have a vote. Those in favor? Okay, so we have 8 yes votes and 1 abstention. Or did you vote,
Yeah.
Ralph? Okay, so 8 yes and 1 abstention. Okay, next item is presentation and discussion regarding economic competitiveness and prosperity chapter.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Tammy DeWitt, Community Planner. So this is under our new format that we agreed upon back in November. So this will be another chapter we've reviewed. We're going to be reviewing. This includes economic development, growth management, cost of development, housing, and the airport. So I did provide you guys hard copies, and if you didn't pick up any, I do have an extra one here. And I already have hard copies printed for you guys for next month. So, basically we'll start going through this. I have it on the screen too, but we start off with the land use. It's kind of like an introduction to the section. So I'm just going to ask, through the text portion of it, would you guys have any comments, suggestions, changes?
Tom?
Well, thank you. I have a couple of things I'd like to talk about. One of the things that this committee has talked about all last year was whether or not the general plan can become more effective in implementation during the course of application, what have you. And in doing that, one of the things that, in my experience, has been that if you can give some definitive recommendations as to courses of action that can be taken, that is very helpful in moving that thing forward. So there's a couple of verbs that we tend to use and are sprinkled all throughout the entire document that the 2 words that stick out to me are engage and enhance. Now, I'm not quite sure what they mean in this context, but they tend to be pretty vague. And I guess this would be directed towards the committee members in saying that as we go through this document and you see those 2 words there, if you have ideas about how to engage, how to ensure, things like that, I think that's one of our jobs is to bring that forward and try to talk to us and get information back to staff with regards to implementatable actions. So there's that, and I'd really like us to kind of focus on that, and I just think it's a good thing to do. Thank you.
Okay.
I also have a comment, Jim Hoffman. First off, I am counting something like 30 goals and something like 100 strategies in this 33-page section, Economic Competitiveness and Prosperity. I mean, if I were to multiply 33 times 7 for all the different sections, we're getting to a pretty big volume. So I hope that the concept of a shortened version that refers to the longer one is going to come about. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of, yeah. The other thing on that, on the introduction section here, and that's what I assumed it was, it would be kind of useful, in my opinion, to give an idea what a significant amount of city, you know, like what percentage or something like that. You've got, you refer to downtown, and then you talk about the airport and industrial way area and so on, and I don't know if you can quantify any of that, just so we have an idea how big an impact different areas have.
Okay.
Okay.
And that will probably be more in our land use section than this section. I know that says land use at the top. That was just for care from, but we'll make sure to give more information as those move forward.
Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess. The note I made here is that historically, we've had issues where City Council has amended development agreements to allow developers to remove commercial components that were included in the original development agreement and replace it with residential. Kind of following up with what Tom Riley had just stated, it would be helpful to have something in here to indicate that that's going to be discouraged in the future from just a practice of amending development agreements to allow developers to remove what is recognized here as a significant need in the city.
Okay.
Okay, Don?
Don Michaelman. On page 2, their goal number 1 and 4 talk about commercial property. In our narrative, should we be using stronger wordage about we want to have more commercial being annexed in or available for development, and just really highlight that versus just having it as part of our goals?
We can. I think when you look at a map of the city of Prescott and where we can grow, there's really not much areas that we're going to be annexing, except maybe the north, which we're trying to stop that and keep Chino from coming down too. So it's mostly going to be infill development, I think we're going to see with Prescott, because through the west, you have the county and Forest Service. To the east, we have Prescott Valley. That's already at our back door. South, you have Forest Service and county, and north, we have the ranch. So I don't see us annexing a whole lot more property except to bring them into the city of Prescott. So, but we can look at that about stronger language when we look at the annexation portions and the land use of where we want to see growth, that portion of it. And that's probably where we'll talk more about that, about what kind of uses we'd like to see in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
If that answered your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Ralph, got a question.
Okay.
One of the unintended consequences of trying to hamstring the council from amending development agreements, it could come back and backfire us in a lot of different ways. So I'm sort of wondering whether or not stating your concern about how they're amended and what they're amended for would be a better course of action rather than saying discouraging amendments to the general plan. or to development agreements.
Yes, Ralph Hess. Yes, I was specifically referencing the practice of amending development agreements to remove commercial components of a development agreement and replacing it with residential. And so, no, I agree. We're going to have to tweak the language to make sure that we don't unreasonably restrict council from making needed amendments to development agreements as circumstances develop. But we definitely need to put some teeth into the general plan to prevent what historically has happened, which from my observation has been repeated amendments that don't provide or do a disservice for the residents by taking out commercial components that could benefit the overall development.
Well, I would agree with that. I guess one of the concerns that I would have is that currently we're looking at different things and also annexations in the vicinity of the airport. And I think that perhaps some of that existing residential that's in there does need to be taken out simply because of the airport's vicinity, the AVO, the airport specific area plan, et cetera, et cetera. So there may be some instances such as that, whereas we do not want residential and we do want to amend any agreements that we may have in that area in order to be able to discourage residential in areas where it's inappropriate. So I think it's going to have to be carefully worded, but I understand where you're coming from on that, but it has to be carefully worded that we don't say, don't ever do this. We should never be able to say that.
I agree with Ralph as well. In fact, we're experiencing that right now with the Quick Trip gas station on 69 that's zoned for commercial, and the residents in that area are trying to stop it from being built. They don't want the gas station, even though it is zoned for commercial. I think Lois had something she wanted to say.
Thank you, Chairman. Lois Fruworth, Councilwoman. When I was reading this section, what struck me, and I'm kind of reacting to the two of you back and forth on this topic, one of the things that I think we need to fit in here and be really deliberate about is whether residents, we're trying to eliminate more traffic on the road because everybody up north has to come south to get a sandwich, to find a doctor, to find a dry cleaner. And then the same thing goes with our industrial park up by the airport. There isn't enough places for employees to grab a quick lunch. So there's all those kind of basic service businesses that, even including childcare for residential areas, that I think we do need to have more deliberately called out to make people be able to live, work, and play and get serviced near their home or near their place of work. I don't know how is the best way to phrase that, but I just didn't see that as coming through in the documents for me, that we're really trying to keep people's lives a little more balanced by having our businesses a little more balanced. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Any other comments? Okay, Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess again. Yeah, one of the concerns, and maybe this can be addressed during the presentation, is we've heard on a number of occasions, and it makes sense, is a grocery store is not going to put a grocery store into a particular location until it determines that it's going to make some money. It's going to have to be profitable to do it. So part of the issue with what we're discussing is it's not just going to be making sure that there's a commercial section. It's going to have to be such that businesses are going to want to place their businesses at those locations. So and it might be helpful for the people who are presenting today who know about that stuff.
Chair, Mary Frederickson, and I just wanted to support the idea of saying discourage changes to development agreements, because that doesn't seem in my mind that means banning changes. It's just if somebody wants to come forward and make a change to an existing development agreement, that they need to back it up with why it is a good thing, either for the area that they're developing in or for the city as a whole. So discouragement, I don't think is an outright ban, and I think that kind of language is not too scary as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing, as far as the point Lois just brought up, it seems to me as I read through this, there was quite a bit of language in there talking about, for example, infill commercial development within neighborhoods for exactly the point Lois just brought up, so that people who live in a particular neighborhood can shop or get a coffee or a dry cleaner without getting in their car and driving across Prescott into a frontier village or wherever else. So, yeah, I seem to have read that as I was reading through, that there was a focus on that, which I appreciated. I think that's a good way to go.
Terry. Gary Warup. I'm glad we're talking about economic development. It's one of my strong points from history. But we're not talking about one area that I think is crucial for the future of Prescott, and that's who's going to work here as we're expanding. One of the tools I used previously, which I think is an incredibly strong tool, is a labor market analysis. I'm glad we have representation here. Who are the people that need to come here for the jobs? What jobs are going to be created? How will we do training for those jobs? I'm really proud of Yavapai College stepping up and have all these training programs now. But what is the future? If we're talking about what the future would be here, who's going to work here and who's going to be able to afford to live here and do that? So I'm wondering if John Heine could address that, or someone address where is the workforce coming from and how will we get them here?
Okay, thanks, Gary. Any other comments before we continue with the presentation? Okay, Tammy?
Okay. So in regards to the opening, in regards to the goals, the first four goals, are there any questions or suggestions in regards to pages 1 or 2?
No.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to economic development. And we do have the special people here to answer questions that I can't. Which you guys had a lot. I mean, there's a lot in here about economic development. That's a huge part of our income coming into the city. And John, do you have anything that you want to
Well, I mean,
about it?
I was thinking we could review that workforce characteristics section that we
Okay.
submitted. It was updated.
Yeah,
You want me to do that?
sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, John Heine, Mr. Chairman, and committee members. So, getting to the point of workforce, since it was brought up most recently, an important part of economic development is workforce, and there's a lot of elements to that. We heard a lot yesterday at the council meeting about workforce housing and providing opportunities. Can everybody hear me okay? Providing opportunities for people that work here to also live here, and that's really important. But one thing that Tammy asked me to do as part of this document that you're looking at today is update. There's a section called Workforce Characteristics. So my friends at Yavapai College put together an updated piece of information. It is in your packet. But, I mean, there are some interesting statistics that I certainly could call out for you to consider. So right now, in Prescott currently, 38.8% of the population is older than the age of 65, past retirement age. That number has increased since the last 10 years. Okay, so this compares to approximately 17.6% in the entire state of Arizona. So when you talk about workforce, by nature, we have a smaller workforce or work pool here because of the age and the demographic that we have here. So the working age population earns 52% of Prescott's aggregated city income, compared with 75.9 in the state of Arizona. So you have a smaller number of people earning the income inside the city of Prescott than you do elsewhere. So just some comparative statistics that are interesting. Wage statistics, our wages are still lower. Average annual wage is about $3,000 lower than the rest of the state of Arizona, and Arizona is not exactly a leader in the country for wages. So you just have to look at that in perspective. rate of unemployment in Prescott is 4.3%, compared to a statewide unemployment. Let me make sure I get this right. The state rate of unemployment is 4.3. Prescott's is 3.9. So that makes sense. You have fewer people in the workforce and jobs, allowing them to get jobs if they want them. The higher retirement age population creates demand for service level workers. So we talk about commercial. Let's add commercial land. Let's bring in more grocery stores. Those are service level jobs. And those are going to be the most difficult to hire. As we build more stores, restaurants, we all want more options. But where are these people going to live? How can they afford it on a service level wage? So there's all these factors, and employers look at that. You mentioned that, a grocery store, they talk about rooftops, right? So if you're going to have a retailer coming in, they have to look at how many people are going to come and shop. But they're also going to look at labor. And they're going to look at workforce and availability and wages. So there's a lot of factors that play into how the workforce impacts our economic development here. It's not in this report, but I did hear a statistic from the same individual that put this together at Yavapai College that we have a significant number of people that live in the Prescott or the Quad Cities region that commute down to Phoenix. My father-in-law is at a rehabilitation hospital right now, and it was shift change. And two out of the 5 nurses that were leaving said they were going back home to Phoenix. So we have that dynamic as well. People are going elsewhere to live, maybe because they can't afford to live here. So I think there's a lot of factors that play. I hope that answers a little bit of it. Education is important, but we have to understand the environment that we're in. So in terms of workforce, labor, wages, all those things, we have some great assets like education. But again, an employer is going to look at, can my people afford to live there? If I'm going to move my business there, can they afford to live there? Or are they going to have to commute from an hour and a half away?
Yeah, Gary Warren, I guess my biggest question is, knowing all of that and not being afraid of what that predicts, how do we draw people here to the workforce? What is the incentive? Because as I see it, it's not housing. It's not a comfortable place to live, and that when you're starving and have to put 2-3 extra people in your home just to pay the rent.
Sure.
If you can pay the rent.
Well, yes. And so I think part of it is, and when we talk to employers and employees about moving here, I mean, let's not forget our beautiful community, our history, our lifestyle, the mountain bike trails, everything that we have, the amenities, the lifestyle here is very attractive. Okay, but that also, I think, contributes to the high cost of living here. So it's a cycle. But I think when we're talking to companies about moving here and bringing employees here, our big selling point, one of our big selling points is the lifestyle that we have afforded here.
Gary Warrup again. Do you have any kind of numbers of the people that are moving here that work from home? Because that's a huge factor in influencing economic development in the country.
That's a good question. I don't have numbers for specifically here, but we certainly have seen in the state of Arizona and nationally that increase exponentially, and that ability exists. Yes. To work remotely, live in a beautiful place, and work remotely for a company. So that opportunity is there. Some issues with broadband and availability and accessibility in all areas, but the state's really working hard on that right now to increase broadband availability. But we don't have that number, but we could get it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Tom Riley, one of the things that I've noticed, speaking to Gary's point, which was a good point, it seems to me that the economic development and prosperity segment here really tends to focus on attracting the kinds of businesses, not necessarily the grocery stores or the restaurants and things like that, but the kind of businesses that are going to pay good wages, number one. That's probably one of the biggest defenses we can do against in the way of affordable housing, is by paying people a good wage. And I think that this really, very clearly points out that your goal is to look for certain industries, whether they be tech industries, airport industries, training pilots, different things like that. And we have a lot of base for that already. And I think it's very meritorious of you to include that in here and to continue working on that. And I don't know that I would want to tweak any portion of this document that explains how they want to go about, attracting more people here. Because again, we can always try to attract somebody to work at Circle K, but sometimes. But that's not what we're really looking for. We're looking for a much higher caliber professional to be able to come into town and move into town. And to do that, we need the industry here to be able to support that. And I think that the goals that are in here very clearly point to that direction. And I commend you for that.
So we'll go back to page 6, which would be the first goals and strategies. Let me go back here. Oh,
Before we go to page 6, on page 5, second paragraph,
okay.
you may want to correct the name of Prescott Gateway Mall and put the new name in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, the mall. Where was that?
And actually, let's just pass the damn microphone around. That stand is a pain in the butt. And I even said that in a prime time kind of a way. There are one of the page 4. Let's see. We talked about. Let's see. In page 4, one need to revise. What about the? Oh, we're talking about the airport and commerce under commerce and industry. So I guess it is going beyond that. It's actually page 6. Goal 1, strategy 1.1. We talk about the airport specific area plan, the land use element of the general plan. There's no mention in there of the possibility of the airport vicinity overlay coming into play. Now, I don't know if that's dead or not, but it certainly is on resuscitation if it's anywhere. But nevertheless, I think that
But it's not moving anywhere right now.
Yeah.
just thinking that, there was a lot of work that went into that, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to include some of that stuff in there, because I think that you'll find the understanding of the land use plan becomes a little bit clearer when people understand why we're not allowing daycare centers in the crash zone, things like that. So I think that's important stuff to help support other decisions and other directions that the plan is going in.
And what we could probably do is support and maintain land use established in the specific area plan and the AVO in the LDC.
Yes.
Land Development Code, because that's where it's
Okay.
going, is in the Land Development
Yeah, but you
Code.
mentioned some of the stuff here, so we need to be consistent with how we mention stuff throughout the course of the document. So I would encourage that to be included in that. And if I may continue?
Sure.
Strategy 2.3, pursue the development of more robust broadband services in partnership with service providers. Can you tell me what is needed to improve or to get a robust broadband service? What do we need for that? What is the infrastructure that's required for that?
Money, which there is the money out there for.
Okay,
So
you put
the
money out there,
state-
but what does the money buy?
so
Tangible things.
I believe they're going to be working on bringing the broadband up, so they need the money to get to, I think Prescott's on the list for broadband. So this area is on the list for bringing the broadband to the area. It's just getting it up here from.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to look a little bit more deep as to what the specific infrastructure is required for improving broadband. Is it
Yeah, it's
Fiber.
It's underground. So the state there's a lot of money right now for broadband infrastructure. The infrastructure is cable in the ground. Okay, that's what they need. There is some opportunity in existing overhead wires with broadband, but most of it is digging cable. So they talk about first mile, middle mile, and last mile. So they're running trunk lines up I-17 and I-40. That's what I call the first mile. Then the middle mile is going to be I-69 coming in. Last mile is from wherever that point jumps off to your home. And it's really what they need the providers. They need to attract providers, kind of like attracting companies. They need to attract providers that are going to build that last mile.
to understand I'm just trying to understand the technology here. Broadband, there's a cable in the ground, but where does that cable connect to?
To your computer, your router at your house. I mean, it's literally that cable.
So it basically connects to some place that provides Wi-Fi and those kinds of
Exactly.
things. And so it just sort of magically appears in the ether?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you've got a lot of you. I mean, I think the main provider here is Spectrum, or not Spectrum. Sparklight, thank you. That's down in the valley. So Sparklight is cable television. They can deliver the signal through cable as well, through cable television cables, but they also can do a separate cable for broadband, and that would connect to your computer, your router that routes it to your house. So,
Okay.
I'm not a technical expert here, but
Well, neither am I. I'm a baby
pretty
boomer.
close.
I'm lucky I can turn on the damn
All right.
thing.
Yeah.
One of the other things that might be helpful in here too, Tammy, is that often broadband is intertwined with cell tower usage. And sometimes that's not the truth. That's not what's necessary. I'm wondering if maybe this might be a good place for a link that kind of takes somebody elsewhere if they want to learn more about broadband. Instead of including it in the plan itself, give them a place to go to learn more about it.
Links and things like that.
The Arizona Authority.
Yeah, Arizona Commerce Authority is providing the dollars and the expertise on that, so that would make sense.
Yeah, so I sent you guys the link to the Arizona Commerce Authority, the digital equity study. And so that's going to be discussed next month. We have a whole section on digital connectivity, which is more than just, it's the in the ground and the virtual. Because some of us, like I don't have cable or connectivity to Wi-Fi. I use a portable Wi-Fi that uses cell data. So as long as I have cell service, and the capacity, that's what we're lacking right now, is data capacity. Everyone can make a phone call. You can get a text message with very little data. My husband was doing it from the canyon. He could find a little spot, he could just get a text message out. That's it. But to be able to use your phone or to be able to use that I use it for streaming. I can have 2 computers hooked up to it at once and work from home. And that's what a lot of people were doing during the pandemic when everybody was working from home, kids were from school. A lot of those areas don't have access to the internet. So they were coming to the library or going to the schools and they were getting the Wi-Fi's with the laptops so they have connectivity. But then you had all that capacity that was using all that cell data. So we're going to go beyond just what's in the ground, and you get up through a line, you have the virtual capability. And when you have a lot of people, and I see it on a busy weekend, and 69's got a lot of traffic, I buffer. Everything slows down because of all the capacity. Everyone's on their phones, kids are on their tablets or streaming movies while their parents are driving, and everything slows down because we don't have enough cell towers around. But we'll discuss that next month, though.
Okay.
That's a whole nother big, huge topic.
My whole purpose for this is to try to get us to put a link in there that perhaps helps describe that. Helps describe that to the voters who are going to be voting on this thing. By having all these links in there, it just makes it a little bit easier.
Yes.
And it does to what Jim was talking about, perhaps even helping making this a little smaller.
Yes, and this is our goal is on the final product here that there is a lot of stuff in the plan, and you'll see on the future chapters that may not even, we can reference it in the plan and then have a link to the website or to another study. Because we reference a lot of studies and documents, and we just have links to those and just mention it. That is an option as we move forward. Because we hope this is going to be a virtual document, and there are a lot of hyperlinks and links and very interactive. So that's the overall goal when you'll see it after the consultants are able to do all that, because I can't. So, but that we are addressing that as we move forward with this. Next, you're welcome. Okay, so we're on page 6 on goals and strategies for commerce and industry and goals. Yes.
Ralph?
Ralph Hess. On strategy 2.2, can you tell us what that would look like and whether there will be any prioritizing of interests between the community and the neighborhood?
So encourage development of suitable sites for commerce. So right now, when a non-residential use is developed, and I guess a quick stop on 69. So right next to Lowe's on 69, there's a vacant lot there, and we have a quick stop that's being proposed there. So I'll use that because it's going through a public hearing process now. So anytime a commercial use is being developed against residential, we do have additional requirements, mostly on a commercial corridor like 69 is. We have additional screening, buffering, and stuff. So we want to make sure that we are trying to address the neighbors' concerns, because we always have it, that they want a 12-foot wall, like you see in Phoenix along there, which we aren't going to do. But we try to take their concerns into consideration as projects move forward. I guess that's kind of where community-wide interest is not at stake. The neighborhood interest should prevail. So a lot of times they have ideas of what should go in there, hence the neighborhood plans, and updating the neighborhood plans we have would help address this a little bit more. And we can put something in there about, as in neighborhood plans as they move forward, because that's where you get more specific in areas. I think that kind of answers your question.
Ralph, yes. The thing that concerns me with that provision or that strategy is that almost everything is going to have a community-wide interest, I would suspect. So
We saw that. Yes.
when making a determination as to when a community interest will outweigh the neighborhood interest, and when will the neighborhood interest outweigh the community interest? And I don't see that in here.
Okay. We will look into that.
Mr. Chairman, Ralph, I understand where you're coming from that, and I don't disagree with it. But I guess the concern comes in is that you're going to find that different councils and different elected officials and appointed officials are going to approach that question differently. And so I think, and because of that, I think that the only way to really control it is not something you can put in the general plan, but rather that's up to the voters really to decide how they want those interests aligned by the people that they elect. And so trying to put something in here, some criteria for saying thou shalt take the neighborhood interest into account if X, Y, and Z happens, or A, B, and C happens, I don't think it's even possible to do that. I wouldn't know how.
Don Michaelman, I had a note in that same one myself, and it sounds like it's almost like an eminent domain type situation. Where's the best good at?
We'll look into it and see if there's a way to reward it or take it out.
Can we back up this, Jim Huffman, to Goal 1, Strategy 1.4? I think we need to put in there something right after the end of the sentence there. Plans are current and protect the airport, for example, the airport vicinity overlay. I think the concept of protecting was missing there, at least from what I saw.
Okay.
Ted?
I'm getting there.
You had a late night last night, we understand.
Yeah.
It's the need, Tom.
The need?
Drawing from Don and my experience on the Planning Commission and a little bit of the City Council, I think it's, I mentioned earlier, Ralph made a good effort, good faith effort to put a little more teeth into the plan. I think it also needs to be specific. If you look at the 2015 general plan, it protected the airport, but they used the word open space, which is a dog whistle in the community. So the degree to which you can be specific, like we need to protect the airport for splays and crash zones. So that doesn't get confused with a more general term like open space. Open space could be, hiking trail and parks. And so our choice of words is significant within the city. So some words are dog whistles and some words bring some specificity so that a future city council meeting on some issue can look into the general plan, or George can reference the general plan and give you a specific, this space is being protected for crash zones or splays. So the degree to which you can be specific is the degree to which George can reference it 2 years later when some proposal comes up.
And that would also include the AVO or the airport vicinity overlay, right?
Yeah, I think, I don't remember what city council meeting. I said,
Right.
we passed that on to us, to you. I can't say you anymore, to us, a year ago. So it's time to make a decision on it.
Right.
So right now it hasn't been on the agenda for some time. So
Well, I think it's kind of went into hold. Now that we have a new airport director coming, hopefully that will pick up again. I don't know, maybe Jim can, that's you, it is you? Okay. And how about the decibel? Has that then been decided whether it's 55 or 65 dB?
I think it's 60.
60 dB. Okay.
Yeah.
Compromised.
Yeah.
Okay.
But regardless, whether it exists or doesn't exist, you can give direction to the city and therefore the future city council by being as specific as possible so they can't interpret it to mean, they want parks and hiking paths. No, you want crash zones and displays.
Okay.
And we'll get to the airport at the end. So any more on page 6 under commerce and industry goals and strategies?
Mary?
Mary Frederickson, I just wanted to make a comment. Ralph brought up on strategy 2.2, the balance between community interest and a neighborhood interest where some issue may arise. And I think really if it is just to the extent that Ralph points out that any development, anything is going to have some community impact and an interest. But if you can just put some a qualifier in there about when community-wide interest is not significantly at stake, largely at stake, something to indicate that it just isn't some vague little notion of the community has an interest in some tangential way, de minimis way, but it has to be of a significant interest before it is overtaken by the neighborhood's interests.
Okay.
Tammy? Well, all right. Almost let you go.
Strategy 4.1, goal 4,
Page 7.
eliminate page 7, so we're
Yeah.
moving it forward.
Yes. That's fine. Same section.
Eliminate unnecessary regulations and streamline development permitting procedures, and I would just add in there, without sacrificing health, safety, and welfare.
Would you say that again? I'm sorry.
I would add to strategy 4.1, without sacrificing the health, safety, and welfare. And on 5.1, engage a professional firm to a strategic planning process. Has the strategic plan, is it in process? Okay. That was another one of those areas where when it does happen, having that linked here would be really appropriate
Okay.
instead of trying to re-explain it.
Okay.
Ralph?
Ralph Hess. Okay, on goal number 4, the reference to the gift clause ruling would replace that with, because there's going to be a number of gift clause rulings. So the gift clause is set forth in Article 9, Section 7 of the Arizona State Constitution. So anytime you have reference to gift clause ruling, which is in here a couple of times or a few times, I'd replace it with the constitutional provision.
With the ARS number?
What's that?
With the ARS number?
No, with the Constitution.
Okay.
Yeah. Article 9, Section 7 of the Arizona State Constitution.
Okay.
And on strategy 4.1, unnecessary. What are the unnecessary regulations?
Well, we don't know yet, so
Yeah, right. So
Okay.
It's a cynical approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people think all regulations are unnecessary.
And the state legislators are doing that too. So, we're used to fighting that over here. Okay. So are we good on that section? Okay.
Maybe instead of unnecessary, you can say burdensome. Eliminate burdensome regulations. Because some regulations are just nuisance regulations, basically.
It's unduly burdensome.
Unduly burdensome.
Burdensome to somebody.
Okay.
To somebody. It's more unnecessary, which we are always looking at what we can take out that's no longer needed or covered somewhere else. We're always looking at our codes for that. Okay. Next on, we're going to go to page 9, the next goals and strategies.
Skipped 8.
Page 8, did you have something on page 8?
Oh.
There's no goals or strategies there, right? No.
Mr. Chair.
Ralph?
Ralph Hess again. On goal 5 on page 7,
Oh, okay.
there's this reference here in 2023, and it's going to be published in 2024, and the voters are going to be voting on this in 2025. So the language here suggests it's something to be done in the future, but it should already be done by the time the people vote on this.
Okay, we'll update that. Okay.
And Jim, did you have
7
something?
guiding principles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just was kind of questioning parking as an issue. Anyway, that's what I really was wondering about is how, you have a link to experienceprescott.com listed there. And I think that looks really good, that document. But how do you advertise that? I mean, is that something that we're somehow getting that information around? Because it's a really good website.
Okay, we have.
Christina Binkley, tourism manager. That's literally our job.
Yeah.
So Experience Prescott is listed on every flyer, brochure, and advertisement we do. We also have social media accounts as well. So most residents will not see Experience Prescott because our focus is to get more visitors and travelers to come to the area. However, anything we do locally, we are starting to put the logo and the QR code on to familiarize the locals with that website because we do believe it is beneficial to residents and both visitors.
So the visitors say Phoenix or Flagstaff, whatever it is. How do you communicate that that website exists? I'm just asking.
I put it everywhere I possibly can. So if it's a digital advertisement, there's usually a QR code or a backlink to it. If it's a physical print advertisement, it is pasted on the photograph, on the article. Anytime we are putting our marketing efforts forward, that website's attached to it.
Okay, thank you.
On the 7 guiding principles, that's where I came up with the idea that we need to be able to have a little bit more teeth and engage and enhance. When I read that, I thought, these verbs are kind of all over the place, and this is where they first came out. So I'm wondering if somehow there needs to be some teeth in something. Engage residents, maybe a link in them, or this is how we hope to engage residents, and then put a link into some of these different things, and this is how we hope to enhance and simplify the visitor's experience, and then put a link in there to how that, you already have that infrastructure there. That information is already out there. So instead of doing the enhance and the engage, let's say how to do that.
Page 9? 9. Goals and strategies. Retail tourism and downtown destination marketing goals and strategies. So we have, how many goals here?
Page 9,
Yeah.
Goal 1, retail tourism.
So 9, 10, and 11, we have 4 goals. So are there any questions or comments or anything on any of these goals or strategies?
I have a comment. Of course. Strategy 2.2, I think, is an excellent example of how you're taking an action and you're proposing an action. And I think that that might be something that you may want to wrap around some of these others. I mean, it says periodically review and monitor other like communities, commitment to their own tourism destination market, blah, it goes on and on and on about that, but it's giving you specifics. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And I think that is that kind of approach to some of these goals will make this plan far more implementable.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe. Anything else through page 11 through goal 4? No. No. Okay. Well, wait. No. Wait. I think you're at your limit. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Let's I'll defer to the council.
Really think after last night's experience with discussion about economic development and downtown in the historic district, one parking garage is not enough for what we need for all the businesses, et cetera. So I'm with you on parking, and I think we need to figure out, this is a strategic plan for the next 10 years. I think we got to figure out how we're going to address that.
Totally agree. Okay. Good point. One of the things that you refer to in here is, and this is more of a question, Troy, from my understanding, we talk a little bit in some of the other things about benefiting from telecommuting, having people telecommute into businesses here. And what is the benefit for the city of Prescott for home-based employment and for telecommuting and those kinds of things? I guess other than having somebody else here to buy, cereal and grape nuts at the grocery store, what are some of the other benefits that are going to be here why is it a benefit?
For people to
Benefit to the city. How does that help us?
Okay. We will look into statistics because I'm sure there's new studies coming out about the changes we've seen with COVID and everything and people being able to work remotely now and that we never had before. I mean, little did we ever think that we'd be able to review commercial plans from our house, on our computers.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, how does that help us? I mean, reduces traffic, different things like that. There's a whole lot of things that go on in that. So just thinking that either we put that out here or...
We have a comment from the public.
Hi there. I'm Patricia Betzel. It will bring in people with higher wages. I was working here remotely from a large medical system in California.
Closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was working here remotely for a company in California, Kaiser Permanente, and it brings in people with higher wages. Now, as a result, that also means you get people who will probably drive the housing prices up because they earn more and they can afford more for a home.
Oh, by God, we don't want that.
Maybe not.
Gary, did you have a comment?
I feel really inclined to address that and expand on that. I did executive transfers for 15 years, all the way from the head of Boeing to U.S. and British ambassadors. And this was years ago, but I saw a huge trend in work from home, where companies were relieved of economic responsibilities because they did not have to have all that office space, which is a double-headed animal there. But being involved in open space and trails, building the trails, being involved with mountain biking and all of that, I see the other economic development side of that, and we'll hear it from tourism if we need to, but let's take an example. A guy moves in, he's an avid mountain biker, and he hears how amazing Prescott is, #1 in Arizona now for trails. He's going to come in and spend up to $12,000 here on a bicycle. When did you ever think about spending $12,000 on a bike? Then he's going to buy all the gear. Then he's going to buy possibly camping gear. But he's going to be investing locally for that if they can. He'll join Prescott Mountain Bike Alliance, get involved in helping to build the trails and expanding the future of Prescott. So it's huge. I mean, when I first saw it many years ago, I was like, why are you moving? Well, I can move to, this was when I was in Ohio, I can move to Prescott or I can move to Phoenix. And I can be outdoors more and I can make my own hours. So I'm seeing, I do my own survey of the trail builders, the bikers and that, and seeing the expansion. And again, this is part of the tourism package here. We are an incredibly desirable place to live. I won't count the last 2 weeks of weather, but we have amazing weather here. And so more and more draws of people, and I would like to see somehow an analysis, a percentage. I don't know how you can do that, but the increase economically is tremendous. You just don't see it because they're the shadow people, but they spend a lot of money here. I know one person who spent $80,000 here just on bikes.
Chair, Mary Frederickson, just to repeat, you can dismiss it as grape nuts at the grocery store, but there's indication here in this packet that sales tax is the primary source of revenue for Prescott. And the people who are working from home aren't just buying grape nuts, they're buying crazy expensive bikes and every other thing that goes along with a lifestyle of somebody who has an income level beyond the service workers. So I think that's a big plus. So just repeating.
The answer to my, Tom Riley. Pain in the butt. The answer to my question then is that the benefit is that people will come here that are a higher wage and will spend their money here, which will help enhance the tax base for the community.
Ted. And I'm still waiting for the thank you note from the city of Prescott from when I bought my Cadillac Escalade and Corvette.
You mean you bought them here?
Yes, I bought them here
bless
and
you.
paid local Prescott sales tax on both of them.
Which I might add is less than any other city in the Quad City area.
True.
As a fellow former Philadelphian once said, either we all hang together or we'll hang separately. I've been talking to a number of people, you know, when it came time for the campaign, people were saying, we need a plan, we need a plan. And I'm thinking, how many plans do you need? We have a general plan, we have a strategic plan, Simple has a plan. But on this topic, and I was going to go back to workforce housing, Tom asked a very important question, I think brings synergy to the plans and makes it easier for the populace to understand. They're connected. You know, I've never supported workforce housing per se. I've always said there's three solutions. We could build another 15,000 houses. I don't think that would swim here in the neighborhood. Or we could raise starting pay equal to, say, Denver. That would be $20,000 per policeman, fireman, teacher, and that would escalate up to the fire chief and the police chief. I don't think that would swim. So what's the advantage of workforce housing? Well, that gives us the ability to hire good teachers, policemen, and keep them here. But there's another advantage. If they don't live in Chino and they don't live in PV, they don't drive on 89 and they don't drive on 69. And in this scenario that Tom asked a question, well, if you telecommute, you're not on the highway. We, as the police chief said yesterday, this town doesn't lay out like a grid. This is not like Des Moines, Iowa. So driving around here is hard. You're uphill, you're down here, you're making a left, you're making a right. I just did a ride along with the fire department last Friday, and I said, I don't know how Phil drives that fire truck around this city because it's tight. You know, like people that own big $100,000 Escalades would know that. The rest of us are driving small cars. But I think the degree to which you can, the general plan could be that format that integrates the other plans and brings some synergy. You know, we reduce traffic. We cause this to happen. I mean, the degree to which you can write it in the general plan is the degree to which the city council can reference it 2 years from now and say, okay, that's why we need to do this, because they're linked.
Thanks, Ted. Jim? You looked like you had something to say.
Actually, I jumped ahead to page 10, so I'll be quiet. Yeah.
We're on 10.
We are on 10. Okay. Under goal 3, Lois, I think we need to put something about parking, what's the right word? Strategize on how to increase the parking. You come up with the right words. I don't know what they are.
You know, and what's funny is that we were told that we have more than adequate parking, that we should reduce parking, is what we've been told continuously over the last 5 years, that we should reduce our parking requirements. So that's what we keep being told. And the state keeps pushing that to...
Maybe during the pandemic, but not anymore.
But the state keeps pushing for us, that one of the bills that we're going through this year was that there was a reduction in parking requirements.
That was for the housing issue.
No, there was other issues too. So, I mean, there was much more, but. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right, we do need parking, and that
And because
parking garage
we
is
don't
full
have,
all the
and
time.
that's what I always say, what I always tell people when we hear that, you know, is that we are not, most of those are for the bigger cities that have transit. And then you have the main commercial and high density along those transit. That's usually how you see that planned, called planning, you know. We don't have that here. We don't have we're starting to get it, the YAV line, at least coming to downtown Prescott. But from there, where do you go? You know, I mean, where I kind of went to school, I would ride my bike downtown to the central hub where all the buses came and the regional transportation. Get on the bus, it took me 2 towns over, dropped me off right in front of the university, and I could pick it up there and get back home. We don't have that here. We are car oriented here, unfortunately. When everyone always says that, I'm like, until we have a significant transit system here, we are automobile oriented. We have to have parking requirements. Yes, we may have vacant parking lots, but that's where we have landscaping for the heat island effect. You know, we have other ways of trying to mitigate those issues. So that's always been my argument as a planner. You know, looking ahead, you need this to have this. So,
Tammy, Mary Frederickson, and you've kind of answered it, but let me ask you specifically. From the state level, when they are pushing for reduction in parking, are they linking it to, well, just have public transportation and you won't need those stinky cars?
yeah, they tend to think that everybody in the state has transit. And then we have to remind them that us up here in the rural areas don't. So we do have, there's committees, you know, that at this time of year, I'm on a committee as part of the Arizona Planning Association, that we look at it from a planning and zoning standpoint with our people like the legislator helping us, that we go through all these bills and we give comments back, and we're trying to educate the legislators too, because they come up with these great bills that they think are great, and then there's us that are going, okay, that may work here and here, but not north of Peoria. Pretty much north of Peoria and that in Anthem, it won't work. So
Maybe the old city hall should be converted into a parking garage and retail. Yeah.
You got to start.
You're a smart man, Terry. I think I fully agree with Jim. I think that, you know, with Councilwoman Furth's thing about parking and more parking in the downtown area, perhaps in one of these strategies you could weave that into it, because I do think it's an issue.
Okay.
And I also think that all of you should call your local state representatives and let them know what they can do with their. Yeah.
Okay. Are we done with through page 11? Nope. Wait. Ralph?
Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess. Going back to strategy or goal number 2, strategy 2.3, I think it would be helpful to expand on this, investigate and identify further sources of it, revenue, because of course we always want to do that. Everybody wants to do that. So maybe some examples, one of which I know is going to be difficult around these parts, but I think as necessary is looking at modifying or amending state statutes in the Constitution so that we're not so dependent on sales tax. And that's, I've discussed that with the Board of Supervisors. I've discussed that with a number of people, and they don't like it. But you can't keep raising sales tax and expect to be able to provide all those service levels. So I think that's something that's going to have to be eventually addressed, and I'd like to see it here.
We will see what we can add to it.
Terry.
Gary.
Gary Warb. I think there's enough people that might be able to answer this, especially Christine or John. One of the greatest tools I have ever seen work for communities, and I think I heard you have been talking about it, is Community Development Corporation. Has that come up in your meetings for economic? No? Well, it is to me, and I've seen it, and I brought money in for it. It's pulling the community together. I was in charge of the overall economic development plan in the county I lived in. And then I found that term, and it pulls in all the entities to work harder for the future of the community. We don't have one here. It's one of the communities, one of the rare communities that doesn't. So I would like to throw that in there for the soup for the future, because my research shows huge amounts, we're talking billions, for community development corporations, because then they are, rather, a government entity is not going to exacerbate all the monies that a community development corporation can. And that's my 2 cents for where I think this plan should be going for the future of Prescott.
Okay, we'll look into it and see how we can add that as a goal and strategy. Huh?
You have it in 4.3.
Oh, I do.
I was wondering what a community development corporation was, so.
Well, I'll expand just a little bit more. It's a representation from all the entities in a community.
Which is that, Lois?
7.
Okay,
Seven.
thank you.
Health, education, welfare, business, community, and economic development. They all come to the table and say, this is where we think we should go. And then it's a 501c3, and I will tell you, I could make a list now of about 700 different foundations that would throw money in Prescott. No, I won't do that. But
So we got it. We have it in there.
yeah, I've already done the research with the Foundation Directory Online Professional, which I think you've rented. And monster amount of monies that Prescott is not getting for economic development.
Great opportunity for work
Okay.
Yeah.
as to what is a community development, creating economic development. Oh, I'm sorry. Tom Riley, I think it'd be a great place for a link is to letting people know what a community development corporation is.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna have lots of links. That'll love me. Oh, no, that's great. That's where you get information, you know.
That's what Councilman Gambogi talked about this being the
Yep.
synergistic hub of our plans.
And we have lots of links everywhere, so, yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Look at me using all this fancy words, huh?
Okay. So I think we're down to page 12, down to employment sectors and goals. Employment sector goals and strategies. 12
Page 12.
and 12. So we have one goal, create quality job opportunities within employment sectors which complement Prescott's demographics, labor force, available sites, and quality of life. Are there any questions
Yes.
about, okay.
Yeah, again, Gary Warb. Strategy 1.1, I'd like you to introduce foundation grants into there. Again, that's my background, and there's gazillions of dollars more through foundations than there are through federal and state.
Okay. And then next, we go down to housing affordability and the workforce goals and policies. I did make a note that way, maybe moving some of these to the housing section. So there was 1 goal and 6 strategies. Are there any questions or comments? Just need to give one to Tom.
Strategy 1.6,
Okay.
creation of a countywide housing authority. That is a very slippery slope. And I think that we perhaps need to be a little bit more cautious about how we put that out there and perhaps just talk about it, think about it, and what are you going to do? How about finding out what a countywide housing authority might mean and helping establish that as a goal instead of saying, go do this. Say, let's find out what this is. That could be, New York City started out that way back in 1940s.
So this has been talked about for about 20 years, at least. Yeah, I belong to a workforce, a housing group in the Verde. We had one over there until the downturn, and they were looking at creating a housing authority for the Verde Valley to start, because usually Verde was a good place to start, and then you can grow from there. Usually, that's how it worked. The county. And talking with the state, they were educating us, and everyone always wanted the county to oversee it. And at the time, in 2007 and such, the county was saying that they were the ones with the affordable housing. We had Rimrock, we had Beaver Creek, we had, the outlying areas of the county, and it was a city issue. Because it was all the cities and towns saying, we have this issue, because this is not a new issue. Because back at that time, it was you drove until you qualified.
So
Steve Mock, that was the thing, that you drove till you qualified. And we don't want to see that anymore because we're trying to get people back. But this is where you see the people, ADOT told me that people from Phoenix are living in Spring Valley and Mare and those areas because the commute is just as long as being around Phoenix, cooler weather. You're not in Phoenix. You just drive down there and drive back. But they're up here for the cooler weather, not as hot, and the lower cost of living at the time. So this has been looked at, but I don't see it ever happening, but it's always been talked about because everyone always wants the county to oversee it, and they've never been willing to do it. But their times are changing.
Well, my thinking is not so much, say, go out and do this. I know it's, it's it snowballs chance in hell, but the point being is that perhaps it's worth investigating,
Okay.
investigating and finding out what it all means with sufficient information, even county elected officials will make a decision, a good decision.
Yep.
I'd like to address that in more depth. I'm opposed to the term housing authority. I already brought up community development corporations. That's one of the functions of a CDC. I just did some research. I've been a proponent of the local initiative support corporations since they were formed in 1979. Last year, they gave about $1.6 billion for affordable workforce housing. I'm kind of tired of hearing the terminology workforce housing. To me, it should be affordable workforce housing. And Phoenix now has Local Initiative Support Corporation was designed by the Ford Foundation in 1979 for the purpose of enhancing community affordable workforce housing, health, education, welfare. They're now expanding it to more encompassing, especially in health and education. So Phoenix now has, I think, one major LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. Under that umbrella, there are half a dozen CDCs now. And I can't tell you the amount of millions that have been brought in just for this purpose through that. So that is the tool that I'm a proponent of. It works. It's not government. It's a comprehensive plan for the future of the community.
So any more in this section for economic development? Okay. Huh?
Any
Oh,
more?
any more for this page? We're on 13.
Jim Huffman. Another opportunity for a link is the Greater Prescott Regional Economic Partnership. Is there, maybe I missed it. Oh,
It doesn't exist anymore. So it should be taken out.
Okay.
good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
There's no regional economic development organization.
Maybe that's why I'd never heard of it.
Currently.
Okay.
You got 15?
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. Okay. So all that could be taken out about GPREP.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Then on page 14, regional competition and cooperation goals and policies. Work with other jurisdictions to promote mutually beneficial cooperation.
I think in strategy 1.4, I think you need to reference SIMPO.
Simple. Okay.
Yep.
Tammy, how does this strategy compare to the general plan for Chino and PV? Are they saying the same thing? Because they're not saying the same thing. You're not doing anything.
I will look at their plans and see what they put in regards to that. Okay, next. Growth management. So we're going on to a next section. We have growth management. And I did have a note here to say, thank you. Thank you, guys. That some of this was addressed in economic development and land use. Things we look at for growth management is water, transitional areas, open space and wildlife, which this will be expanded on the other sections. This is just a brief link, brief discussion about it, just for growth management we're looking at. But there's a whole open, wildlife corridor section and open space section you'll be reviewing next month. So are there any comments or questions about this section?
Goal 2, both strategies, exactly what you just mentioned. I think that this is an opportunity for us to not only link to outside documents, but perhaps even to link into the internal general plan itself as to where we're going to be covering those strategies more completely.
Okay. And once we have it all together, it'll be easier to do that. What are you doing? Oh, you're helping? Are there anything else? So we have, so goal 1, promote and balance of land uses to preserve and enhance neighborhoods, encourage compatible redevelopment, include housing that is affordable at various income levels, and to protect environmentally sensitive areas. That's a pretty big goal. But as we look at growth, that's what we look at, is how it affects that. Goal 2, pursue strategies to preserve and enhance the unique historic and pedestrian character of downtown. Goal 3, promote sustainable planning concepts for growth, new development areas transitioning to new uses, and include active citizen participation. Which, as you see last night, we have a lot of citizen participation in this community. Encourage infill development on parcels with adequate infrastructure. We're always trying to find the infill development because they do have the infrastructure. Goal 5, promote effective management and mitigation of negative growth impacts such as light pollution, loss of landscaping, site disturbance, erosion, construction on hilltops, ridgelines, and the loss of open space. And then goal 6, develop strong community support for active growth management through sustainable development practices such as compact development and pedestrian connectivity. Are there any? Yeah.
Ralph?
Ralph Hess, Strategy 5.1. What is multimodal transportation?
Anything other than walking. Bikes, horses, skateboard, one wheels, electric bikes now support. Okay, so define it. We can do that. Okay, I'll put a definition of what that is.
Just as a comment, I think that strategy 6.1 is an excellent way of describing what your goal is with that particular element. So well done.
Thank you. Anything else on these 6 goals? No? Okay. Next, cost of development. Oh, wait.
Lois.
I know you're going to talk about this as cost of development, but I really do think this deserves to be a goal. We all learned yesterday how we haven't touched police and fire stations in 30 or 40 years. You know, it needs to be a goal that, since you're in the growth section, that as we grow, so we keep pace with our basic services in this community. And we can't allow us to get this far behind ever again. So yes, growth needs to pay for growth. You're about to talk that section now, but I think that
Impact.
is a goal that we should have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So basically this section talks about the different ways that growth pays for itself through sales tax. We have city property taxes, intergovernmental revenues, user fees, development impact fees. And I'm looking to when we last revised our impact fees. I will be updating that.
I agree with Lois on that. You know, this is back in August of 14,
Yeah.
and we're way behind on that. And I think there needs,
Okay.
And we're getting ready to do one again.
So we did one in 2009. That's why I have it highlighted, because I wasn't sure. So she said we did one in 2019, and we're getting ready to do it again to look at our impact fees. So we'll have that updated as we move forward.
Tammy, Mary Frederickson, at least your right up here indicates that the impact fees in August 2014 were decreased. How about
Yes.
the 2019? Which way did they went up comparatively?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but I do know there was a, Hi, Chelsea Walton, Community Development Director. So yes, Public Works worked with an outside consulting firm in 2019 to do a study, and I do believe the result of that is they increased. And I believe it was at that point that a non-utility impact fee was added based on square footage of either residences or non-residential uses. So I can't remember the amount, how much it was, but yeah, I do think it went up.
Do you have a sense of whether or not the 2019 impact fee plus this new fee that you referenced got us above where it was pre-2014?
I don't. That is a Public Works question, and we can ask our friends over in Public Works to get those
And
answers for you.
the other question I had is whether or not in 2019, when you were working with whoever, how Prescott compared to other similarly situated
Yeah.
cities as far as the impact fees
Sure.
go?
So development impact fees are statutorily required, excuse me, and they're based on the infrastructure needs of the community. So I don't think there's an apple-to-apple comparison because the city of Prescott is the water and sewer provider, whereas other communities may have that outsourced, and there may be independent bills for that infrastructure. So we can ask our Public Works team to provide more information as it relates to comparisons between jurisdictions, as well as what the rates were back, maybe in the 2015 timeframe for the plan previous, and then what we're looking at changes in the future.
Thank you.
Yep.
Back when impact fees were first introduced here statutorily, there's a huge study that goes on that talks about what all the different, it's a huge study, expensive and extensive, in that it goes and defines what each of the departments are going to need. What does roads need? What does police need? What does fire need? What does recreation need? What does this, all the way through utilities, everything, public works. And I think that, if the study in 2019 was that comprehensive as our original study was back, I think it was in the late 90s, I think was the first one. And if the study was done as extensively as that, then great. If not, it's time to re-up and really take a look, because one of the things that we talked about and still talk about is that, the whole concept of if you use it, you pay for it, and that whole thing. And I think that's just fairness. And if you have to build if you build a 3,500 square foot home, there's certain services that you are going to be using. And, if it's cost you an extra $30,000 to keep those services up and not get as far behind as we are right now, then by golly, maybe an extensive look at that. And I don't know if that's something we should incorporate in here. Once you find out more about the 2019 study, that might be an appropriate addition to the narrative that you have.
Yeah, that kind of, Jim Huffman, kind of brings up the thought about, all the discussion about fire stations and police stations and so on. And I'm wondering, like north of the airport, was that assessed, and how much, what are the different sources of funding for building this kind of infrastructure? I'd really like a list of all the things, because, we're talking about tax increases or what, bonds or whatever. And it would be nice to have some general idea on this whole impact fee. Yeah.
And then we can also put a link to the studies too that we have, or where they would be housed on the website. So that's impact fees, annexations with existing infrastructure, or cost allocation mechanisms applied to new development. Then, and we have one goal under that is continue to require development to pay its fair share using impact fees, buy-in fees, off-site improvement charges, and other legal means. So, is there any question about this section or comments? No. Okay. So the next section is that workforce housing. This is a section you guys saw last month when Nicole did a presentation to you. So we took your guys' comments and suggestions, and we integrated it into here. And some of it was, we're going to have links, because a lot of the stuff, graphs and stuff that they had are in our introduction in regards to age and populations and stuff like that. We'll have links to that information in the plan. But and then last night, the city council approved the short-term and long-term goals for the workforce housing. So we'll add those into this at the end. But in regards to this, was there any other questions or anything or information needed? Or
You're going to add links, correct?
yes.
You're not going to add all the information to this.
No, they're in other sections of the plan. There was all those graphs about age and population and stuff.
And
That's all
cross-links.
introduction. So we'll just have a link to that graph
And to Jim's point earlier of the length that this thing is starting to come to, there's a lot of graphs that you have in here. You know, perhaps you can,
Hyperlinks.
yeah, hyperlinks to the graphs.
I'll
things
talk
like
with
that.
the consultants about that. That's something they'll be looking at with me to how to better, what's the term? Relay the information, how to show it, map it. There might be other ways to show this information that doesn't take up as much room. How's that? Okay.
Tammy, why is
Tam-
that section highlighted?
It was probably for me to say that I need to do something to increase housing. Oh, okay. This plan provides. Oh, it was my question if we were thinking about this. So that would be more like a question I think I was going to send back to Mike. And it's something we'll look at. Because it says it sets out the plan. It says this plan. Well, what plan? I think that was mine that just needed more clarification for me. Because it says this plan provides, and I was thinking to myself, what plan? So, which is the plan that the workforce housing group or whoever they hire will create, correct?
Yes, Michael McGinnis with workforce housing staff liaison. Yes, like Tammy had mentioned, last night they approved our goals, both short term and long term, including our mission, our vision, and I think that's about it. Oh, also the chance to go out and look for a workforce housing program manager and whatnot. So a lot of different goals there. And what did you want me to zone in on here? Okay. It sets out strategic goals and plans. So in our next workforce housing meeting, which is the first week of April, we'll be discussing a lot of our strategic goals. Now that we got the go-ahead from council, now it's time to really focus in on what that strategy exactly is my understanding.
Mr. Chairman.
That's what will be on the agenda.
Don Michaelman, in the program there that you're working on, is there anything in there dealing with putting teeth into some of these things? For example, property being annexed in for housing there. There's a section over here for workforce, low income, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden it doesn't get developed and it goes another way.
Right.
And also the other question I have is if special things are utilized to get workforce housing, how do you keep that as workforce housing versus someone making a big profit?
Right.
Yeah.
Good question, and those are all the dilemmas. Those are all the questions that the Workforce Housing Committee is discussing right now. It's been a bit of a slow process because, you want to have teeth, you want to have that leverage, and the city honestly doesn't have too much leverage with a whole bunch of land which they own, which they can, negotiate or work with developers on to specify workforce housing development. So what do? Do you partner with the government, and HUD that has restrictions on what, will be in that housing on a range of, percentage of median income and set at that range. But once they move out of that range, does that mean that they have to move out of that housing development? So there's more questions than answers right now from how I understand it on how the Workforce Housing Committee understands it. And we're really, after last night, after, the council giving us the go-ahead, now we really get to have some of those discussions, and plus, talking about neighborhood and community, it's going to be a kind of a long haul because this stuff can be pretty controversial, when you're talking about workforce housing and affordability. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and to just add to what Mike was saying about what the committee is doing, I think they have done so much research and know all of the options. Like Gary brought up the CDCs, we're also looking at community land trusts. The Public Housing Authority is probably on the lower rung of things that the committee is looking at as far as official organizations that can do something beyond what the city might be able to do as just one stakeholder. So to answer the question, it's now that the council has approved this path forward, the committee is going to be really digging into all of those options. But I feel like they have such a good base of information, such a good base of data, that with the state funding that we're hoping to receive $200,000 from a grant from Arizona Department of Housing, with that in play, now is when the work begins. And we can finally answer all of those questions more definitively.
Gary?
Gary Warab. So when I attended your workforce housing meeting, you used the parameters of 49,000 to 90,000 to qualify? Is that what I heard?
That's correct. It was, yes, rough about. That was the.
Okay, so I have this
target
question,
range.
playing the devil's advocate.
Okay.
California just passed a legislation that all fast food workers must get $20 an hour. If that happened in Prescott, where would they live? Sedona just passed legislation that 40 people can live in their vehicles in the park. Those are full-time employees. They don't make $49,000 a year. Where do these people live? Where's the workforce of the future of Prescott going to live? When I go to Fry's, is it going to be open in the next 10 years because those people have no place to live, the cashier, even the manager? So I have to say that I think your perspective is extremely short-sighted. Using the word workforce instead of affordable workforce is discriminatory in my mind. And you've also eliminated the majority of funding that you're eligible for. I sent you the data on national and state levels of giving from foundations, which you're not getting when you call it affordable workforce housing. So please, I would like you to reinvestigate why you're using that terminology. Are you fearful of Section 8? Fear, false evidence appearing real. I lived in Section 8 housing as a kid, saved our lives. It was the cleanest, most organized place I have ever lived, much more in my house now, I'm sorry to say. But there is this fear that we're going to bring in an element that would ruin Prescott. That's not going to happen. We're going to bring in an element that wants to work and live here, can afford it. So please reinvestigate your terminology. Then you can open up to much more funding to make it happen for me now to go to even the gas station. Tell me a gas station attendant that makes $49,000.
Right. I appreciate the feedback.
So, Mike, did you answer the question why we didn't focus on the lower?
Right. So this is, the Workforce Housing Committee, while it was initially, created as a standing commission committee with the direction strictly on workforce housing. That is the direction from council to committee. Workforce, we're talking about essential workforce, firefighters, police officers, teachers, and nurses. And with that goal in mind, trying to kind of keep it simple, it still remained very, very difficult and something that it's been a big item to tackle. So,
Lois?
Yeah, just a thought. We've been talking about over how many general plans? We've talked about affordable housing, and we've done nothing. So this mayor has decided to start where there's unanimous community support. But I do think that, we could put something in here in this general plan that following the success of workforce housing, if we can find solutions the community is sustainable for, then we have the resources and the wherewithal to think about what's the next step to begin affordable housing. But I don't want to, we've continually thrown everything together, and there's a huge portion of this community that doesn't want to work on affordable housing. So we've worked on nothing for so long that I think we're behind. So I do agree with you. I think it's a miss to not have it. Hopefully we will be successful in the next 3 to 5 years. And then within the lifespan of this general plan, that should be the encouragement to figure out the next step for this community, not every community.
And also, Gary, you're talking about people that make less than $49,000 a year, and that's where apartments would come in, because not everyone's going to be able to afford a house. There are some jobs, maybe if they're married and their combined income, they might be able to afford a house. But there are entry-level jobs where you have to move up to be able to afford a home, and you're going to rent in the meantime.
I'm going to repeat this. I probably said it once before. In 2020, I spent an hour on the phone with the vice president of the Ford Foundation, who got very excited about Prescott. Had no idea about it before, actually, which she was Canadian, now living in Louisiana. She has a new career now. She left the Ford Foundation. But the process you want to look at is called LISC. I've told it to George before. As far as I know, nobody's followed up on it. Local Initiative Sport Corporation, last year, $1.6 billion for workforce affordable housing. They want to come here.
Ted.
I've once said you can call it workforce housing, you can call it affordable housing, or you can call it popcorn. But wherever some proposal comes to construct it, Don Michaelman and Tom Riley and I can assure you, we've seen so many before the Planning Commission, they're not going to want it. So just because you change the name of it doesn't mean that it's going to be approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council, because there's a educational effort to get out to the community for them to realize that if you want to attract police and fire and teachers and nurses and keep them, because, Terry, you and I have talked about the idea of not just renting. You can rent, Amy Bonney can rent an apartment at a low rate for the policeman. So if she hires a new policeman, like she just hired 5, and spent $500,000 to train them, and they can stay on the force for a couple of years, and then Denver or Phoenix or San Diego says, we'll give you another $15,000 to come here, and they're gone. If they were to own property and gain the appreciation that everyone's enjoying right now in Prescott, they're more likely to stay. So you mentioned a few times here about infill. I don't know how likely the residents are to new development. It's probably got to come, but they're going to remember the development of the tiny homes on Rosser Road. I mean, the Rosser Road was zoned SF35. No one's going to build usually you'd build like a $4 million house on SF35, and nobody's going to build a $4 million house on Rosser Road, but the neighborhood came out and their heads blew off about putting something that vaguely represented affordable housing. So this has to be real thought out, not in terms of, okay, we'll call it a workforce housing and that'll sell. That's not going to sell. It's when somebody sees a proposal from a developer to build something, their heads are still going to blow off. So that requires an education program that's in depth.
Oh, sorry.
And then if you go to page 29, actually the short-term goals and the long-term goals, which were approved yesterday, that number 9, community outreach, creating a communications plan is a big part, I think, of the overall success coming from the Workforce Housing Committee that they want to focus on, what the council member Gambogi just mentioned, getting out there and really, for lack of the better word, sell this important idea to the public. So it's going to take a lot of work, it sounds like, yeah.
Don Michaelman, looking at those goals here, could you give me an idea, number 2, formalize a third-party stakeholder organization? Give me an example, what you're thinking of.
Yeah, I can. And 1 and 2 kind of went together a little bit. So we're not completely set on hiring a full-time workforce housing facilitator position. Again, we're waiting for grant monies to come in order to possibly fund that. Formalizing a third-party stakeholder organization group, that could be in the form of a non-for-profit, that non-for-profit having members on the board that are stakeholders in the community, different levels of developers, real estate agents, anywhere from, just people that would, workforce housing would be important to and could make a difference. A lot of the grants that are out there that go strictly or directly to workforce housing or affordable housing, usually a non-for-profit needs to be involved. City of Prescott will most likely not be that body. It's going to be some entity out in the community that is the driver of that sort of development.
Has there been any discussion on your committee of down payment assistance? For example, Ted was talking about policemen, and they can't afford to buy a house, they rent, and then another city offers them more money and they're gone.
Right.
Whereas if they buy a house, they're sinking roots into the community, and a down payment assistance could be something the city helps provide, and then so much per year or so much percentage per year is forgiven.
Right.
The longer they stay employed with the city.
So what I would say to that very from a preliminary standpoint is, those are the things that are being discussed, and not to get too into the weeds. Something like that would most likely, and how it happens in other communities, is through a third-party stakeholder group, like a non-for-profit, that does some sort of housing counseling or is able to utilize grant funding as well as donations from the community to help with down payment assistance. So those things are being discussed. For sure, and will be further, because that's what other communities are doing. One of the things to combat this issue.
Can we go back to page 24 for a second? I'm just curious about the two build-to-rent projects. Where are they? What are they?
We have one in Granite Dells. That's, I believe, under construction right now. And the other one is South Ranch, Granite, and Deep, I think, in Deepwell at Pioneer Parkway and Willow Creek Road, across from the new car dealership going in. By the APS substation right there. It's right behind there. And we do have others that are starting to come into the area too. We're starting to see Prescott Valley right now has a whole bunch of them, but they're starting to come into our community now. And they start at $2,200 a month. For 1,000 square foot place, yeah. So, I mean, you see the one out in Dewey, well, it's Prescott Valley, Dewey, the Great Places, which they're the ones doing the one out on Deepwell Ranch. That one, they start at $2,200 a month for 1,000 square feet for just a lease.
Good Lord. Yep. No comment.
That's why whenever he says apartments, we do see apartments in Prescott Valley starting at $2,000 a month for 1,000 less than 1,000 square feet. So it's coming to where even renting right now is not affordable.
That brings us back to down payment. If you're paying $2,000 a month to rent, that's a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And how are you going to save any money to make the down payment on converting your $2,000 a month in rent to $2,000 a month in mortgage? You're never going to be able to get the down payment to get a mortgage.
Right now you're seeing $2,000 for rent, $1,000 for a car payment. Right now they're starting to do car loans for 15 to 20 years, which the car's no good by the time you might pay it off.
Right.
So I mean, you see a lot of this stuff going on. It's like you are asking how are people doing this? And
so I think that, we have to find a way to say to the renters, you're already making a mortgage payment with your rent. we need to figure out a way to convert that mortgage payment into a that rental payment into a mortgage payment and
It's those down
into a
payment.
mortgage without the down payment, because we know you're good for it because you're making the equivalent of a mortgage payment in your rent anyway. So somehow we have to convince the banks or do something to say these people should be owning a home at $2,000 a month, not renting an apartment at $2,000 a month. Lois.
Terry, you guys are lacking what we had yesterday. They said they were waiting until they could complete this. Points number 2, 4, and 5
Wanna
were
come-
specific.
Come on up.
Yeah, you guys, I'm sorry, Lois Verworth. The details on 2, 4, and 5 specifically are addressing these kinds of things.
What page are you?
Where on page 29, points 2, 4, and 5. So this third-party stakeholder group, this is the hospitals, this is the city of Prescott, this is the school district. We all need to come up with ideas that the workforce employers can get behind, and then that was the some of the stuff there in number 4. What's the financial package to help the workforce know what their options are? And these are exactly what you were just describing are some of the tools. You know, maybe it's a lot cheaper for us to help with a down payment for an employee who's going to stay than to keep generating $100,000 training programs and they leave after 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So that's what is all the details these guys will add now that we've approved it. But they're doing good work.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for housing? No? Nope.
Anything?
Okay. Next is airport. We're done.
Whoa. Nice try, though.
I knew you'd like that one.
Yeah, I like that one.
So the airport was sent to John that works for the airport, and he helped me update some stuff on here and the goals and strategies that they had.
Yep.
And I do know we have a new airport director coming in, so I will make sure to run this past them once they get their feet settled a little bit. But there is a lot of information in here. All of it has been updated as much as possible. We do have outdated plans here. You have the airport master plan, the airport business plan, which we still can't find.
Yep. That's right. Been looking for it.
We've looked everywhere.
Hang on, Tim.
Just a news flash. Rick Kreider's first day is Tuesday, May 28th.
Okay.
Correct. So
It's
that's
a ways away, but
lines up with the new city manager reasonably well. So
Yeah. So we'll make sure
a
as we go
fresh
through this.
start
Yeah.
between the city and the airport. I
While
think
we're
that's a
saying
great
starting
idea.
dates, okay,
Yeah.
so airport director, May 28th. When is our new city manager start?
26?
May 20th.
Oh, 20th.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yeah, so, but we do have a lot of outdated plans that we know need to be updated. We have the AVO we need to mention in
That's
here,
right.
which we didn't. So we'll add language about the AVO in here. Was there anything else that I may have missed in this,
Well,
Jim?
frankly, this may not be popular as usual, but I mean, I really think people need to understand the situation that occurred in 2015 and 2017 so that they understand, you know, yeah, we're spending money buying a property. Why are we doing that? Okay, there's a reason. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Just understanding the history, you know, may help a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
I've said that publicly, so and it's a lawyer approved, so we can say that.
Okay. All right. All the better.
Tammy?
Yes.
Michaelman, do we want to put something in here that says we really want commercial development around the airport? Not residential, but how far away from the airport will you want to keep this commercial?
And this is where the updates to, I believe, the ASAP, mostly the ASAP, the airport specific area plan, would really come into effect, and also the master plan, and then with the AVO. The AVO, I think, will have a huge benefit because it's going to be in the land development code, so it's codified. So you have to adhere to this. And then it's up to us, planners, because it's going to be our responsibility to enforce that as it being part of the land development code, that when projects come in or developments come in, we verify it's in compliance with the land development code like we do with everything else.
Mr. Chairman.
Gary?
Gary Werb, I think this would be a really good place for a link for a map. So that
Of the airport?
seeing is believing, and
Sure. Map of airport.
Good idea. Yeah.
We have lots of maps with all the crash zones and impact zones and splays. And
Noise profiles, all
Noise-
sorts of, yeah.
But we'll make it legible though. That way it makes sense. Is there any goals that you think that we should add at this time? And then, like I said, when the new airport director comes on board, we'll confer with him too.
Well,
Are you good?
I'm going to look at everything I can get my hands on, and so this is a work in progress.
Yes.
I think what you've got here is a really good start.
Okay.
I really do. But yeah, lots of expanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lois?
You know, we always talk about this as a regional airport, but guess who does all the paying for it?
Right.
And so the other goal for me is really, especially in light of the Quad City economic development effort going on, is how to have more skin in the game and more money in the game from the other municipalities who right now we are floating their boats and we're not getting our fair share. So I think that applies here in the airport. And then the other one for me I'm sorry, I'm going to make you go back when we were talking about all the different ways we fund things, sales tax, blah, blah, blah. I think we pay a lot of money in property taxes to the county, and we don't get our fair share back necessarily. And I think that's something that we need to be pushing more in all of these regional economic is we're the lowest sales tax in the region. We're the lowest fire department cost in the region. We pay the most real estate taxes, you know, from as a group, and yet, like, why can't they pay for a second library? I know we're doing some partnerships on some parks and a few things, but I really do think that we could have more county skin in the game in helping us be the hub of the region. And I think there's something more to do with our Board of Supervisors in this space as a goal.
Maybe we ought to surcharge tickets for people out of PV and Chino.
A toll.
Hey, wait a minute. I get a pass. Or I'm working from home more.
We'll have like a special city employee badge.
Or they're going to teleport me from my house to work. Where's our teleport machine in this new building? Okay, sorry. I digress. That's too futuristic. Okay. I think we are done for today for this.
Other comments or
Any
questions?
comments
Airport?
for airport?
I think a real good comment, Lois, because we are a regional airport. Everybody in the whole county, in fact, as far away as
Flagstaff.
Black Canyon City, they're enjoying the benefit of the Prescott taxpayer dollars going to support this airport. And, you know, granted, we do get federal money, which is from everybody in the whole country, but, you know, the city of Prescott is really bearing the burden.
The residents.
Right, the residents of Prescott, right.
People as far south as Anthem have fallen out of.
As far as Anthem, not just Black Canyon City, right? Right. Any
Okay.
other questions, comments, suggestions? Ralph?
I had one comment I overlooked because Tom had covered my major concerns with page 8, the 7 principles, and the specific comment that I overlooked related to the third principle. I had a question. Emphasize the quality of visitors over the quantity of tourists. What's that mean?
I think that means wealthy tourists that spend a lot of money.
I had that circle.
You also have different types of tourists. In two I think it was 2010 or so, they did a sustainable recreational planning effort countywide. And a lot of it was given to a lot of economic development information. I actually still have the original presentation that had all the economic information for that. And there's different types. There's I might get this wrong. So we have the IS and the ERS, like ones that use equipment and that buy the expensive mountain bikes, the kayaks, that need equipment to go out and recreate. And then you have the other type that doesn't take equipment to go like hiking or bird watching and stuff like that. Well, that requires equipment. But you had the different types. So that may be what they were referring to here, but I'll ask Christina to kind of explain that a little bit so I can put more information in there. But I think that's maybe what it was.
I'm sorry, this might be a good place to add in links about ecotourism development, things like that. That would be really good too.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments, suggestions? I can't believe it. It is only 4:05.
I know.
Well, in that case.
Well, the next meeting, so are there updates? So our next section we are reviewing, and I have here for you, is a community connected. This is where we'll probably have everybody will speak. We have circulation, which is going to be the big topic. And a lot of the information, so you know kind of where it came from, the City Prescott Bike and Ped Committee worked with Ian, our transportation planner, in updating the circulation. And so a lot of the information here is from the regional transportation study, which is starting to be updated. It's updated every 5 years. So some of this information, just so you know, can be taken out and links done. So it's something to think about as you're reading through this. We also added, so they were looking at Prescott Valley's general plan on the maps and stuff that they added. So we do have some developments that had future connectivities in here, which could be used as links later if we wanted to. And there's other information in here that were from the regional transportation plan. And then we also have open space, and then we also have open space, wildlife corridors, which Game and Fish has reviewed this with me, and then digital connectivity, which talks about the equity plan and connectivity for digital connectivity.
Are we still looking?
Huh? I have them right here
right
for
now.
you. Oh, yeah.
And are we still looking at 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock. I think
Okay.
we did it today, and
did
I think
good
this
today.
one, once you kind of read through it, and if you have any questions, email them to me so I can reach out to the certain people and get information if you have them. So that's why I said I have the line numbers and page numbers this time. Just thought it might help, maybe.
Okay, so we're looking at the next meeting, Wednesday, April 24th at 2 p.m.
Yes.
Okay.
Tammy, let me ask one last question. How much smaller is the abbreviated version of this going to be compared? Because this is basically the same size as the previous
It's probably
master.
bigger.
Okay, so
We gotta remember too, we're adding elements, so
Right,
we've added sections to it, and some of these are expanded on a little bit. But that's why I want you to think about some of this information are in other plans that we can just add links to. So
But
just wanted to throw that out there for you guys to discuss. And
But
look
you've
at.
said that there's going to be an abbreviated plan too.
Yes.
And that's to be like 25% of this one, or I don't see
know yet.
I don't see the general population reading this whole thing.
Oh no, yeah. I think the main part we're going to see that people are really going to look at is going to be the implementation section, which is going to have all the goals and strategies, who's responsible, and the timeframes. I think that's going to be the main section that people are going to look at, and that's going to be a standalone document. I mean, it's part of the plan, but that's a working document because we'll be updating it as a goal's done. Hey, look at was it done? Hey, look at this was done. This is what it cost, or But we'll know that as the consultants help us with that.
All right, any other questions, comments, suggestions? Going once, going twice? Meeting adjourned.